Story 1. Waking up to a strange man standing over me watching me sleep. I froze and stayed still till he left. I thought it was sleep paralysis until I found a box cutter he left on my kitchen table. Turned out to be a maintenance man for my apartment who got fired. I actually felt my soul leave my body. Wait, I saw him there, something told me to act asleep and not move, and finally he left. Literal nightmare. I'm so sorry for the fear you must have felt and then the long time afterwards to start feeling a little more normal and safe again. That box cutter he left, so fucking creepy. Like he was transmitting his plans to you even though he didn't actually do it. I do think freezing was absolutely the right move, not in a victim's blaming way, just a huge few, obviously. I read a lot of true crime and one thing they do is stand over the person and work up their nerve. If you would have reacted in any way, his adrenaline must have been racing so high that it would have probably set him off to doing what he intended. Story 2. Years and years ago I was very depressed. I was living alone in a tiny apartment. I had taken a shower, put on a robe, short silk robe for dressing, not a bathrobe, and laid down on my living room couch facing the wall. Immediately fell asleep. Woke up hours later and the pest maintenance notice was on the floor right inside the front door. He had come in and sprayed while I was laying there on the couch with my naked ass out. Freaked me right the fuck out. I went to the office and had a breakdown. They called the pest control place. Tech claimed to have never noticed me. Bullshit. It was a 600 square foot apartment. He definitely noticed the half-naked woman asleep on the couch. I get that there's a job to be done, but he could have gone right back out the door and knocked harder or notified the office. Creeps are gonna creep, I guess. Story 3. A female friend at uni told me about the maintenance guy at our campus, who would bustle into people's rooms without knocking. His excuse was that he was busy and just wanted to get on with the task. One time he just opened the door to her room and walked straight in while she was finishing getting changed. I call bullshit on his excuse, though. The accounts I heard about that guy just made it sound like he wanted to get an eyeful of whatever can be seen when you walk into a room unannounced. I'm a big guy, and an attitude like his would creep me out, never mind being in that position if I were a woman. Your story is even worse. I don't know how people end up being so pervy and creepy. Story 4. When I was in middle school, almost the same exact thing happened to me. Except it was someone literally breaking in, not a maintenance man. Every time I told someone that I just froze and didn't do anything until he was gone, people will give me huge lists of all the badass things they would have done. It is so normal and not shameful to just freeze and do nothing, and seeing this comment was kind of refreshing. Story number 5. Staying in an old hotel somewhere in Spain, Catalonian mountains, alone half asleep, I felt someone tickling my ankles, heard female giggling. Being half asleep I moaned about it and told them to quit it. I woke up in the morning and realized I was alone in a locked room and what? They're usually harmless. If there is a church nearby they probably decided to freak you out. This happened to me in Goa. My dad and uncle asked me not to look out of the windows after 1 a.m. at night and I did as they said, but one night, I heard someone kind yelling, so I looked out of the window and saw some women dressed in clad white with freakishly long hair. I was spooked out, and when I woke up the next day my dad suspected that I had done exactly what it shouldn't have because I looked horrible, like the blood had been drained out from my face. What happened after is a long story and I don't want to bore people. Because this is actually a series of stories. I'm not from Spain, but a former Spanish colony with a strong cultural legacy from Spain, very Catholic too. My dad grew up in a very small town, very Catholic, so there is lots of folklore related to churches. Belief is that the dead like coming out the cemetery at night to fuck with people in many ways. So, there might tricksters having a laugh through scaring. But also, that some scare for the sake of harm. My dad says that when he was 16, he was walking home from a party at 3 a.m., and there was a man in a suit and hat standing next to a streetlight just staring at him. He lived near the church, so my dad is sure it was a dead person. He ran home and woke up his grandma, who assured him he had seen a dead man, and that more likely than not he wasn't harmless. Story number 6. I always struggle with recounting like this. Like, what does this mean about reality? Is the scientific method flawed? Is spirituality actually localized, and not global? What does this mean about death and life in general? Is this actually real, or is it some kind of thought manifestation metaphysics? Okay, so it's already 3:15 a.m. but I can't sleep, so I'm gonna entertain y'all some more. Kinda so after this incident I had to change rooms and my dad decided that he wanted my room. So, while he was sleeping, he felt like someone was trying to remove his blanket, but he didn't really pay any mind to it. But after some time, the blanket was snatched and that woke him up. One of the ghosts, which according to him was a girl, but he could only see the shadow, was in his room. Now I would have freaked out or tried to attack the intruder, but my dad had other plans. He took all his clothes off and slept naked in the room. Yeah, you guessed it, without the blanket. And the shadow didn't bother him after that. Even the ghost was ashamed. Another one. My uncle had to leave his office late because some customers kept him waiting. And my uncle is one of those people who get easily scared, but he's very religious. So, at that time he had a scooter bike, whatever you call it, and while he was passing the church, he felt like 10 people were pulling on his vehicle, but he didn't look back because he knew the place was haunted. Instead, he looked in his side mirror, which showed a clear view of. He kept trying to accelerate the speed and leave the spot, but he couldn't. So he recited a throne verse, which is recited to ward of evil spirits, and voila, he was free to go. But he never stayed late at the office after that night. Last one. So after I left Goa, my dad and uncle invited their friend over. And he had been told to not open the door at night. We all had to follow that rule. My brother used to hold his pee for 4 to 6 hours. That neighborhood was a nightmare for his kidneys, and at around 2 to 3 a.m. someone knocked on his door. Now he knows not to open the door at night, so he waited for the person to say something, and the person did just that. The person called out his name. Let us call him Noah. Now Noah was sure that the person behind the door was indeed my dad because same voice, and he also knew his name, but Noah had noticed that the person had only knocked twice and my dad always knocks more than 3 times, and he also noticed that the person, who was supposedly my dad, had only called out Noah's name twice. In our religion/culture it's a saying that evil spirits can't call out your name consecutively thrice. So Noah patiently waited for the third call, which never came. Instead came a blood-curdling scream which almost gave that poor man a mini heart attack, and needless to say he didn't sleep that night. The next day he told my dad and uncle that as much as he appreciated their offer, he'd like to stay at his crappy hotel and be alive rather than sleep with AC on but be dead. P.S. My dad and uncle didn't hear the scream at all. If these didn't bore you, which I'm sure they did. There are some more now that I think about it, but no more in Goa. Story number 7. I was leaving my friend's place and I hopped on the light rail. I passed by the large Christmas tree lighting in downtown, and I remember thinking I forgot it was that night. It's an event, I'm aware, but have only attended once. Anyway, so I kept going. I get home. Walk in the door pondering if I want to order a pizza, while thinking I turn on the TV and flip to the news where they start telling the story of the arrest of a guy a bit earlier. The news says this guy had been planning to blow up the tree lighting event, but the FBI had set him up with a fake bomb, and luckily he'd never realized it was a dud. The time he pressed the button was around the same time I was passing by. I felt really creeped out by that for a while. Story number 8. We had a guy who was picking up women in the college town area I lived in and murdering them and dumping them down this road I would bike down to get my ex-BF's parents' house I'd visit occasionally. I was walking around college town in broad daylight, and this guy in a beige-looking car pulled over and asked me if I wanted a ride. I kept walking and I turned down my street to walk back to my house, and he pulled in and tried to cut me off with his car. Immediately, he hops out and tries to grab me and I started to run. It just so happened someone a little further down that street had gotten pulled over and I started to scream for the police. He gets in his car and peels off. They caught the guy murdering women some time later. It was that very same douchebag. I almost lost my shit when I seen it on TV. Story number 9. Was doing World War II archaeological mapping of fighting bunkers/body recovery in the Pacific. We were in one cave that was used as a holdout, mapping the area and documenting for the local government. My flashlight caught all this glinting shiny stuff in the cave floor and I was like, oh damn, that's pretty, what's going on here? I walked closer and in the dark under my flashlight I realized it was a fuckload of human teeth that got blown apart and mashed into the mud of the cave floor. Looked down and I was standing on more teeth and other parts. It's strange how fast something that looks so pretty can turn sad and creepy. I sat for a sec to look around and it got a lot worse the more I looked. Plenty more to the story, but that's the general idea. That was a wild project and the things I saw during that one will stay with me for a long time. It's haunting but in a sad way, not scary. Just knowing that civilians were in that cave as well when everything blew up with the soldiers that came in and used it as well. The civilians couldn't leave and the assailants weren't going to give up alive. Part of the doctrine of that particular fighting force in the Pacific Theater at the time. So many shoes, high heels, picture frames, family heirlooms that folks had taken as they ran for safety. Parts of people were absolutely everywhere in that damn cave. Crazy ass day at work for sure. Story number 10. I used to work a graveyard shift in retail. Basically, it was a clothing retailer and when the mall was closed, I would come in and clean the store up, fold the clothes, fasten security tags, etc. I didn't have a car, so my day was me waking up at midnight, walk 2 hours and get in an hour early to start my shift. Well, the road I took has no gas stations, businesses, or any sort of public place until halfway point at a park. And, I suddenly have the problem of my stomach isn't agreeing with what I ate before I left, so I remember the park has a public restroom. Now, this restroom was basically a basin with a drain for the urinal, a low-pressure sink and a stall. The public restrooms had no door. Was just open going in, and a grate making an opening for whatever light coming in. And no lights inside whatsoever. So I use my phone flashlight, go to the stall, lock it, and do my business after turning out the light. A couple minutes pass of me looking at my phone. And I hear loud, heavy boot steps coming into the bathroom. Now, I know people make the joke of, bet you're glad you were on the toilet, haha. No, I learned fear makes your butt clench faster than a cigar cutter. I hold my breath as I hear these boots walk up to the stall and try the door. Thankfully, me locking it showed. I was about to say occupied when this being grunts and growls, and starts rattling that door. I stood up, getting my pants up quickly, getting ready for a brawl. And I yell, I am armed. If you don't stop I will open fire. Now, the scary part was, I was bluffing. I had nothing, no knife, no gun. Just 2 fists and a load of adrenaline. The next thing I hear is these footsteps tear out like a bat out of hell. I wait a couple moments, tighten my belt, and make like a bat myself, my hands up ready for what there may be. Thankfully, no one was there. I never sprinted so fast to that job, and I never stopped at that park again. Story number 13. I was playing the game Fear in my room at night with the lights out when I turn around and see what looks like the girl from the game standing there watching me play. It turned out to be someone visiting my roommates who for some reason let themselves into my room and watched me play for who knows how long before I noticed. Story number 12. I was having a nightmare about the panda from Kung Fu Panda and he was making the most inhuman sounds, sounded something like, oh, but it was so uncanny. Anyways, I woke up, looked around, and I heard one last, oh, while I was awake, I wasn't inside a second dream either because I remember processing what happened and leaving to eat breakfast. TLDR, I still heard my nightmare after waking up. Story number 13. On deployment with the Navy, a 19-year-old lookout spotted a dead body in the ocean. So the crew did the decent thing and brought on board, double-bagged it, put it in a freezer, and handed it over to the local authorities at our next port visit. Not to go too far into the gory details, there were enough teeth left to identify it by dental records. Somebody had to clean the wire stretcher that had brought it in. And despite the common acronym for Navy, Never Again Volunteer Yourself, I knew another teenager would be assigned that chore unless somebody more mature took it on. So I volunteered. The corpsman provided PPE and iodine and I gave it a good scrubbing. Sailors being what they are, 2 rumors ran around the crew that week: don't eat the peas, because the body had purportedly been stored next to the frozen peas. It wasn't, according to both the corpsman and the CSs, and there's still skin on that stretcher. This was also untrue. Yet having been the fool who had volunteered for that work, I got ordered to clean the stretcher a second time. Every crude joke imaginable made the rounds too. What's his name? Bob, etc. Much to the distress of the lookout who had spotted the body and reported it. Took her aside to say a few kind words to the effect of there's a family that will be able to get closure because of her. She did a good deed. Story number 14. I was about 14 and my parents had gone out to dinner with some adult friends. I happily stayed home on my own. I'm watching TV with the cats and I hear a noise from the garage which shares a wall with our living room. Both cats stand up and start staring at the wall, peering with all their might and not moving a muscle. I hear it again. Then a bunch more noises, clanks and clunks. There is definitely something in our garage. I'm scared. The only thing separating us from the garage monster/hatchet murderer is a flimsy internal door in the utility room with an average lock. We are out in the country. Police will take some time to get to us. I can't call my parents. This is ancient pre-cell phone times. I grabbed the fireplace poker, nice heavy iron one, and the phone, with its mile of cord trailing after me, and head upstairs to a more defensible position. I call my uncle who lives about 10 minutes away and tell him what's going on. He says he is on the way. I ask him, should I call the police? I was a kid and wasn't sure about calling. He says hell yes. I call the police and they say they're on the way. A wonderful lady is on the line with me now, but I'm more scared than ever because there is more clanking and clattering from the garage and now a weird tapping/scratching on the utility room door. Now the cats are puffing up and growling at the door. I've never seen them act that way before. My heart is in my throat. The lady on the phone tells me to go into the house as far as I can, put as many doors between me and whatever is in the garage as I can. I'm now cowering in the master bathroom, behind my parents' bedroom door, the bathroom door, and in the shower cubicle. But that phone cord I mentioned, it leads straight to where I'm hiding. I wait, scared to death, while the lady keeps me informed about what is going on. I hear shouting outside, male voices. The lady tells me the police officers are outside and that they've found a man at the side of the garage. In retrospect now, I'm just thankful that the police didn't kill my uncle who turned up with a shotgun and was prowling around outside the garage trying to peer in the windows to see who or what was inside. I've never been so scared in my life or so grateful. Thank you amazing 911 lady who stayed with me. Thank you police officers who came to my rescue. Thank you uncle who was ready to protect me. Who or what was in the garage? A possum. We all had a good laugh. We don't know how he got trapped in there, but he was stuck in our closed garage and having a good nose through the recycling boxes, hence all the clanking and clattering. I made my parents buy us a fancy new cordless phone.